Welcome to Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws, the podcast that cuts through the rubbish to explore the world of neurodiversity. I'm your host, Nick King.
And I'm your host, Kate Fox, and together we're here to explore, understand, and celebrate being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world. From ADHD and autism to dyslexia and other quirky brains, we talk about it all.
And go off on tangents. So, whether you're neurodivergent, love someone who is, or you're just curious about neurodivergent minds, you are in the right place.
Let's get ready to juggle some words and maybe even a few chainsaws, metaphorically, of course. Hello and welcome to Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws. I'm Kate Fox, she is Nick King, and today we are looking at rejection sensitivity. Don't turn off, don't turn over, we need you. It's all right, we won't notice if you do, like at this juncture, and we never actually really look very intensively at our listening figures in case it pings the remnants of our rejection sensitivity. I'm speaking for us both there. Is that partly true, Nick? How is it for you?
I think I would note if they went down and sort of wonder if we needed to restart doing something or change something. I would also like to say that this "How do we cope with rejection sensitivity" came from the live podcast recording. So we have remembered you. Your question has not been rejected. We didn't do it on the night. I remember not doing it on the night because I thought it would take a bit much time.
That was ironic, wasn't it? Someone sitting there going, my question was really good, my question about rejection, but they didn't ask it. Perhaps this reflects on my value as a person, and perhaps they've not spoken since, and it's our fault.
Several months later. Hi.
And you see, and actually, that is one of the ways to cope with rejection sensitivity, to recognise quite often, A, it's not about you, and B, sometimes when you thought you were being rejected, you were being delayed, or your acceptance was in a queue. Well, that's good. I should put that in a list of tips. It's true, though. Anyway,
How are you with rejection sensitivity? Where are you on if we have a scale of if people look at me wrong, I'm really upset, to like people tell me to go and shove off and I'm not that bothered.
Ooh, okay, that I like that. And okay, so I'm going to talk about a change in that scale because it is quite a dramatic change. So I would, if you'd asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have still been very high on the if you look at me wrong, I'm going to be upset. And now I'm quite genuinely quite low on that scale. And that is helped by actually, well, a great variety of things, I want to say, like situations where I have been rejected brutally and have had to come through it, and found things like Buddhist meditation very helpful, and working more consciously around rejection, and recognizing I had a sensitivity to it, and really recognizing how much that impacted me in my creative life. Because as a writer, actually rejection is quite normal, it's quite common. You apply for things, you don't get the things, you try and get published, you don't get published. And then in my emotional life, recognizing it was holding me back in my relationships, because I was not friendships, really, it's not been an issue there, but in intimate relationships, just having this huge fear of rejection, which could either make me avoid relationships or make me super, super, super hypersensitive within relationships in a way that was damaging to the relationships. So it got to a point where basically I felt like I had to do something about it. And I would say I quite effectively have.
Yay for you.
Thank you.
Done.
I don't normally. We were just talking before we were recorded, weren't we, about how hard it is to kind of broadcast your own value or broadcast good things you've done. And I suppose maybe, I don't know, maybe I could have usefully spoken out before now about, oh, I've been on a journey from really, really hypersensitive to kind of okay, and basically recognizing it's not about you most of the time, even if it seems to be about you. Even if someone was like, I do not want to go out with you because you are aesthetically displeasing to me, and I don't like your voice, and also I don't want to read your writing, and it's rubbish. To be honest, I'd still take that as not really about me. It would say more about them. Whereas in the past, I could have just, it would have crumpled my sense of self.
I think I would still go and write a stern letter to that person about being mean to kids.
Well, yeah,
I wouldn't have been impressed.
no, it's a good point. And actually, but again, like something like that would totally say more about them, wouldn't it, than you in that instance? So, yeah.
I
Okay.
think yeah, I think that was my realization that quite often those kind of situations where you think you're being rejected is often a lot less about you and a lot more about the other person and what is going on in their head, in their life. I think in my very late teens, my very early 20s, and I think it stems from like bullying at school. I had a huge sort of like reaction to any kind of perceived rejection. But there was definitely a point in my 20s where I did just kind of really start to get over it. And I think it was that moment of realization where I was like, oh no, it was actually really about them and what was going on with them. And sometimes, you can't control other people.
And again, that's another part of the realization, isn't it? You kind of, when you're at a stage where you're like, well, if I do this, if I make myself look this way, if I do this for people, if I am indispensable to them, then I cannot possibly be rejected. So you're putting yourself in a position of being an extreme people pleaser, kind of orienting yourself around their reactions to you. And certainly, yeah, gosh, I have done that in relationships a lot, but ultimately you're losing yourself. It doesn't contribute to a really good balanced relationship. um it's destructive, and actually, yeah, oh, gosh, yeah, I am sort of I am sort of realizing how important the journey from, I mean, because I've been flipping it, I was literally, quite literally, I'm going to do some rejection boasting now. This is an unusual thing to do, but let me boast. So technically, I was rejected by my birth father because he kind of went back to his wife instead of bringing up his twins. I mean, that was a lot, to be fair, twins. Anyway, um, and to be fair, I didn't know about that rejection because I was a baby. But anyway, still a rejection. Then I was rejected by my actual family when I was 16. I left first because they were a bit dysfunctional. But then they did, none of them wanted to talk to me after that. And that's a lot of people. And then was I rejected romantically? Yeah. Oh gosh, yes. By my foot, like by my first relationship person, by the person I lost my virginity to. He literally quite dramatically ghosted me, although I did get back in touch when he was in prison a couple of years later. Anyway, that's quite a lot of rejection, isn't it? Like, I could win at rejection bingo. It's almost horrific. Oh my God, how am I alive? But anyway, how I am is, oh yeah, and at school, I was, as you were, as many of us neurodivergent people are, I was really bullied. I did have some good friends, to be fair, but I was also like really bullied and actively rejected by the cool girls. Um, oh my God, and I am just slightly having to breathe out. So, but I had this kind of core of sod you all, to be honest, partly like, which was
Yep.
partly a genuine deep down, in fact, none of them are quite living my values anyway. I mean, that was very deep down. And also well, I'm just going to get on with my own thing. And partly a trauma dissociative response as well, to be fair. Um, but I was able to just find things that I liked doing eventually and people that I liked to be with. And I did go overboard on the people I was with romantically had to like me way more than I liked them, and they had to really desperately need me, so they couldn't possibly reject me. Unfortunate. I've had to unpick that over many years. Um, But what am I saying? Sorry, I've got lost in my morass of rejection. Oh yeah, but basically, honestly, in the end, it was
It
them.
was, in summary, it was them.
It was them. I mean, if I'd been a different person, but yeah, if I'd left home, for example, probably I might not have been rejected. But I'm really glad I did leave home. Um, we talk about in particularly in ADHD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and it's talked about as if it is a syndrome, I think. And I suppose it's helpful in one way because it means there is a label, and people who are really hypersensitive to rejection can talk about it, they can open up about it. And I think for people who are not, it can be difficult to understand. But really, probably RSD is a
Trauma response.
yes. Yeah.
Like that, the long list that you just did. Like that kind of that sounds definitely traumatic. You're winning the rejection trauma.
It's possible it may have led to one or two symptoms of trauma, but I feel quite lucky with the symptoms I had. Like primarily, it was dissociation, which actually, once you eventually start undissociating, if you feel that you're in a safe enough space, which I was by my 30s, as a poet in a stable relationship, etc. Then things like swimming, which has been crucial for me, brought me into my body. I always gravitated towards paying for person-centered counselling. I was lucky to be able to pay for it. Not that I ever had a great income, but I recognised it was important to have that so that I had some. The point of person-centered counselling is to build self-acceptance, really, to make your what do they call it? Locus of evaluation. Because I always think of a locust of evaluation, but it's locus as in place. Your locus of evaluation should come inside you rather than be outside you. And so, over a very intensive process of that, over years, then added to by the Buddhist stuff, it sort of happened.
And got there.
Hope you've been enjoying the podcast. If you fancy showing your support, you can leave us a little bit of money through the PayPal link on our website, and I will use it to buy a lovely cup of tea and make my life better. I can't speak for Nick. It'll probably be something very worthwhile. You can do that via Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws, the website, and it's an easy way to help keep the podcast running. Thank you for being part of our journey.
Yeah.
I think what you were saying about people having words and being like, I have rejection sensitivity and quite strongly. I think it is important and it's good to share that because I work with a few people who feel that and share that. And it does just sort of, I often do extra check-ins just to make sure that they haven't taken my 3 sentence email personally because my emails are never over 3 sentences. And it's never personal. It's not about them. It's about me and my dyslexia. Um, do you know what I mean? But I do, I think it's good to have words, but I am on the same page as you that it's not something within your brain. It is because we are often very, very traumatized from a very young age about that sort of rejection. I think there was a study. Oh, I should have found it before we started. But essentially, it was primary age children, when they were interacting with autistic primary age children, were far more likely to dislike them on sight, essentially. So even from your youngest age, whether your father did often did one at birth, you are going to have been rejected by your peers if you were neurodivergent, and whether you knew it or not at the time. And whether that was a very active rejection or whether it was far more subtle, it will have been there every moment from a very, very young age. And that's a lot to process. It's a lot to process and it's a lot to sit with. And I also don't think we should be beating ourselves up for what end of the scale we're on either.
Oh, no, very agreeing. No, absolutely. And if you, and in fact, it may be a danger of me and my having kind of got to the point of, oh, it's not personal, which is quite hard won. Probably I'm not as tolerant as I used to be of people who I
Oh.
can perceive as being rejection sensitive, because I'm like, do you not know? Have you not learned? Have you not got there? It's not about you. And actually, I need to be mindful of the way that you've talked about being, of kind of recognizing and tuning into people who are more rejection sensitive, actually. And yeah, I do. Well, no, a lot of my friends are quite robust, otherwise, probably they wouldn't be my friends. But there are some who will take, I mean, they'll take, oh, it's a bit fatal, really, isn't it? To take the communication patterns of an ADHD person personally.
Yeah.
It probably really is about them and not you. But yes, but it's such a, oh, so I'm watching Channel 4. And that actually, this connects to my rejection sensitivity. I'm watching the open house experiment. Is it called that? It's basically, it's a thing where these couples, in varying degrees of like hopefulness and dread, go to a house full of people who want to be polyamorous. And I am watching it partly out of, well, it's, I mean, so I was once in a situation where, oh dear, this was a terrible thing, where a relationship nearly opened up, and I was like, this will be a great challenge for my remaining rejection issues. And literally, there was someone on the show last night, a woman who was just like me. She was like, yeah, this will be really good, because my worst fear is to see him with another woman. So what I will do is come to this house full of stunning women who want to have sex with him on Channel 4, and I will face my fear. And I'm like, oh my God, that's what I did, minus Channel 4. This is not going to end well, because she's trying to overcome it in her head. Just the thought. It's like, well, I don't think I should be like this. And it would be better for him and me if I was not like this, if I did not have this. But what she's contending with is a body full of very, very intense trauma from being cheated on in the past, actually, is the key driver of it, and probably childhood abandonment stuff. And they've got as far as she's actually encouraged him to put a hand on another woman's knee, and she's like, I'm okay. This doesn't seem as bad as I thought. But the preview for the next show is her just being devastated in bed, and him going, oh, it's not going very well. It's like, no, because like probably this massive exposure therapy, it's not actually the way to heal your massively ingrained trauma shame stuff, which is very bodily, it's very somatic, and that is not a safe space that you've just gone into. Oof.
I have not watched that yet. However, I was trying to make you watch in a similar vein of Rejection Virgin Island the other day, wasn't I? And you got like one episode in and
I
you were like,
can't
what's
do
going
it
on?
because it's Autistic Island. It's not
It's Autistic Virgin Island very specifically.
exactly, it's Autistic Island, but no one mentions being neurodivergent, and then middle-aged sex therapists pester them. This is terrible. I could only watch one, but people do keep telling me about it.
So obviously, again, they have a lot of trauma. They have a huge amount of rejection to the point that they've needed like unconditional not rejection from a professional surrogate, which is probably slightly better than the exposure therapy than your woman in that other show's doing.
Oh, they're probably much better. And actually, do not get me wrong. I can absolutely conceive of of situations where I would find it somatically, but so bodily helpful to step into a situation where there is guaranteed non-rejection from a very safe sexual partner. I would totally do that. I just wouldn't do it on Channel 4. I wouldn't do it with like when I was 20 and all the therapists were 50. And I wouldn't do it when no one appeared to be allowed to say that I was neurodivergent. These are the conditions I would not do it in. But I gather that it is like someone was telling me that one of the people on the show, a bloke, just needed somebody to see his body and go, you look great. You look great. And that was all that was needed. He'd not, but he had felt so afraid of rejection of his body that he couldn't show it to anyone in order to get someone to just go, oh, it's a body.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, obviously, when we were young and going through that sort of like that developmental time of we're teenage to 25 years where your brain's growing, we did have exposure to bodies that didn't look like our bodies in sort of, magazines and blah, blah, blah. And it was in the 90s, they were all crazy thin. If you looked back at that, nobody was eating healthily. Um, but I think obviously, and I think that's part of the thing about them, they're being in their 20s. Young people now are just so much more exposed to so much more. There is so much more imagery, there's so much more videos. I don't know if you know this, but most 12-year-olds have accessed porn, the majority. So there's much more access to porn and much more sort of this idea of what perfection is. And if you are not perfection, you will be rejected by society because you are not fitting in with this, quite frankly, what is often an AI version of a human being. And I haven't even got a moral high ground on this. I put a filter on this soon.
Oh, how do you do that? I don't think I
Yeah,
have a filter.
we'll get that sorted.
Anyway, but yeah, no. So it's this stuff is pervasive, isn't it? It's everywhere. So it almost feels to me like anti-rejection sensitivity programs would really be a great idea. We were talking with Anna Knight about resilience and what that maybe looks like. And actually, I think when they said that radical self-acceptance is the basis of resilience, that is also, isn't it, the basis of overcoming or having an antidote to rejection sensitivity. If you can develop radical self-acceptance, which may need help if you did not grow up in an environment where there was even the very basic of acceptance of your very existence, then that's what's needed, really, isn't it? But it's like being a frog in. Oh, I get this analogy wrong. Like I get jokes wrong. I want to say it's like being a frog in a pan of water that gradually gets turned up to boiling. The frog doesn't jump out because the turn up is so gradual. For many of us, we have grown up in environments that are we think this level of toxicity and not self-acceptance or not acceptance of others is normal, so it is quite hard to combat it.
And I think just as much as I think it's a very slow turn up that you don't necessarily notice, I think it can also be a very slow turn down that you don't necessarily notice until you get that sort of moment where you are being rejected and then you're like, ah, all right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and
yeah,
like Anna Knight was like, and okay.
yes. That's and actually I don't want to, because I've just kind of done the rejection boast, both for level of rejection and level of overcoming it. But I'm thinking of some recent rejections. So I'd applied for a particular writing residency, and I, to be honest, thought I was a complete shoo-in to get an interview. I was like, obviously, in fact, to the point where I pretty much left the day free in my calendar. I was like, obviously, for when they interview me, and probably for when I get the residency, I'll need to leave the time free in August. And then I just got an email going, no, we're not. But it did help, actually. We had 1,600 applications for 50 interview places. So on the one hand, I absolutely was still able to go, oh, flipping heck, that is a lot of people that applied. The chances of me getting that were very small. It was okay. I did still, I think, get some visceral sting of, oh, maybe I'm like, it did allow some of those tendrils of thought, like, oh, I'm not that good a writer, to be honest, and my writing's not that important, it's not that vital. And those little tendrils, I think they might have sneakily been growing again a little bit since that without me noticing. So it's only as we talk about it now, I think, ooh, it's probably quite an active process when the trauma of rejection, of social rejection, familial rejection, of what other types of rejection, like work rejection. You know, the roots of this stuff go deep, because ultimately rejection, our bodies think it's a case of life and death. Rejection, social rejection in the primeval times would mean that you were cast out of the tribe and you wouldn't get to share in the joint cooking of the dinosaur. I know that there were not dinosaurs really, but go with me.
Antelope.
Antelope, yeah.
Antelope.
And you wouldn't get to join in the cave painting. But worse than that, the lion would just come and eat you because you didn't have any torches or GPS or anything. That was it. Social rejection is death. And our bodies do remember that. But actually, nowadays, not true. I'm speaking from a very privileged position in the northeast of England. Social rejection is not death, but in some countries it still is actually death.
Depends how close your Tesco is.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And actually, thank goodness we have more opportunities. Is this good or bad? The rejection, fighting the rejection has to come from within. Otherwise, it's not especially going to work. It's the inside that has to change around this and kind of get a distance from that sense of I have been rejected. It is a rejection of me specifically. Because yes, you could seek out new people, new places. I'll go somewhere I'll belong. I'll find somewhere else. But there'll always be a moment of feeling that you don't fit or you've done something that's displeased someone. It has to be core, deep. Oh, so it's deep work actually to undo.
It
Depends how.
is, and I think it does. It takes. I don't know anyone who I can personally think of in their 20s who is particularly resilient to rejection. And I think in my 20s I wasn't either. I think it is something that comes with age and work if you do the work. And I think, I don't know, maybe just life experience. The more life you have, the more you do get rejection from anything from work to partners to friendships to, I don't know, randoms in the street who decide they don't like you. But also you get to build that sort of self-acceptance. You get to build your pie, like Anna was talking about.
Yes. I've never said the word motherfucker so much. Oh, I've said it again. It's
Yeah,
I
we
have
are
often,
E-rating.
you know.
Well,
But this idea that you, even the parts of you that are sticky, even the parts of you that you think are flaws, you kind of evaluate. Well, is this because society says it's a flaw, or is it because I've crossed a value of mine with this flaw and therefore want to repair whatever it was? Anna gave the example of her sharp tongue, and sometimes she would use it on someone who is being a twit online, good use of it, and sometimes she might use it on her partner, in that case, not what she would ideally have wanted to do, and she would repair. I really identified with that. And I also have a very sharp and eviscerating tongue that has traumatized past partners, actually. And I would like to not have that in future, but it is part of my pie. And there are loads of other things that are part of my pie, just a part of my pie.
and we can only do, self-reflection and radical self-acceptance and take the good bits and the other bits because there are no perfect human beings.
Is that our dramatic Kevin McLeod ending? It needs a bit more, I think. But yes, agreeing, perfect human beings, and therefore,
Ha.
even our responses to rejection will probably be quite imperfect for quite a while, maybe all of our lives. Maybe they'll be messy, maybe we'll become avoidant, maybe we'll become snappy and defensive, maybe we'll stop doing things. But because life is so short, it really, a life lived without fear of rejection is a much more potentially full, alive, and joyous life in all its flaws. So, if anyone tells you different, you tell them, sod off, it's not about you.
Thanks for tuning in to Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws. We're so glad you joined us today to explore the fascinating world of neurodivergence with your hosts, me, Nick King.
And me, Kate Fox. If our conversation sparked a thought, a question, or even a smile, don't keep it to yourself. Drop us a line at hello@neurotypicals.don't-juggle-chainsaws.co.uk or visit our website, neurotypicals.don't-juggle-chainsaws.co.uk, to write in. We'd love to hear from you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, consider leaving us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast platform.
Until next time, keep embracing the unique ways you juggle the chainsaws of life.